right, happy to be joined on the Sports Card Shop at Moco guest line by my next guest. He is, I like people who love the history of the game, kind of respect the history of the game, and I believe this gentleman does, and love what he does. We're going to talk about some of that stuff, obviously, but this baseball card life's Mike Steveline. Welcome to Sports Card Nation.
Oh, great to be with you, John.
So I know I know you're from Central New York, and I asked you off there, and you said, hey, if you want, let's save it for the podcast. So I agreed to do that. So the suspense is killing me. So I got I'm here in Syracuse. I know, like watching you mentioned that you're originally from Central New York, so I have to ask, what part?
All right. Well, drum roll, please. I spent the first roughly 7 years of my life living on the west side suburb of Syracuse, New York,
There you go.
called called Fairmount.
Yes,
Fairmount.
Fairmount Camillus.
Yeah.
Yep,
I
that
went
is
to
cool. Small world. What? I mean, I don't want you. What years approximately were you here?
79 to 86, and I went
Okay.
to Onondaga Road Elementary School. If you know where that is, it's on
Yep.
Route 173 on the west side.
Yep.
I called it Route 173 is Onondaga Road. So, yeah, and I
Yep.
live like a quarter mile south of the school, right next to a church. And
Yep.
yeah, that's where I was born there until I was 7. And then when I was 7 in like 86, I moved about an hour and a half south to Binghamton. Some people might be going on Google Maps right now. But then I spent a few years there. And that's where my hobby journey started. So I was
Yeah.
there in Binghamton area, New York. Card shops all over the place. Kids with trapper keepers. Going to
Yeah.
school. We all collected baseball cards. I played in little league. So, yep.
Yeah. I had a feeling that when you didn't want to. I was like, I wonder
Yeah.
if I'm going to hear Syracuse, and that's funny. I'm originally myself from Brooklyn, New York. So when
Hmm.
you were here, the dates you were here in Syracuse, I was in Brooklyn, but Syracuse is
Yeah.
home now. So and I'm familiar with the school, the area, and all that good stuff. And so that's cool. Small world, and
Hmm.
yeah, that's your hometown, right? Always will be, even though you did move when you were younger. But I got to ask you, you're collecting. I know you're heavy vintage. You do anything modern too much, or I mean, what percentage would you say?
Well, I got back. I took a long break, like a lot of people do, and
Yep.
and in 2017, I opened my like a storage bin. I guess I'm thinking of the Storage Wars show, where I just haven't
Yeah.
didn't look for it in this storage place for probably 15 years. I just had all my cards in there, got them out in 2017, and I got back into it. I did open a lot of packs in 2017, did tons of modern, and then I have a better job than I did as a kid in the 80s and 90s. So I went back and bought, a bunch of the cards that I couldn't afford,
Yep.
back then when I was a kid. So did that. And then, as you know, as a hobby veteran, a lot of us just move backwards. And
Yep.
that's what I've been doing the last 2 or 3, well, I'd say from 2020, just kind of been moving backwards.
Yeah. So new stuff. I mean, when the new flagship comes out, is that something you're gonna crack some boxes, or at this point have you kind of stayed on the vintage side of the aisle, or does it depend?
I love breaking packs, but there's just so many that I want, so many cards that I want. Like it just takes away from that budget money. And
Yeah.
plus, I have a younger brother, and every Christmas he buys me the factory set of tops, and I, put it in a binder every year, as you can see behind me,
Yeah.
and just
So
do it
you
that
kind of
way.
cover, yeah, you kind of covered there, and I heard you talking about it too on one of your videos. What's the price of wax too? Nowadays it's tough. I've said on my show, very little new wax at this point. Actually, most of what I open is for review purposes, and some of it is sent. I've been fortunate to have some of the companies say, hey, for review, post it up, talk about it. But generally, and believe me, I've opened plenty of wax. That came from a lot of trial
Mhm.
and error, and then having my own store in the early '90s. I've heard another thing we have in common besides that Syracuse thread is you, like myself. You were, I heard you mention like you were going to a card store a lot, and the owner just, hired you and your brother. That was how I got my first job at a card store. I was just there so much. The owner just said, John, you're here almost every day. Why don't you just put you to work? And I've talked about this before. We worked out like a half cash, half like store credit deal, and I wind up just spending. It was really all store credit because I spent even the cash we agreed on store
Mhm.
merchandise. And then I did my first show at 15, and then wound up opening my first store at 20 years at 20 years old. From working in the store, did you ever do shows as a dealer?
No, but the owner and myself would go to shows and buy some stuff and do some trading at that time. But
Yeah,
we didn't ever just set up. We didn't do it. Didn't do that.
yeah.
So.
Just any reason why? For me, it was sort of like a lot of my friends were like, John, I was working for the store owner. His name was Rudy. And a lot of my friends were like, you got quite the inventory yourself, John. Do you ever think about doing the show? And I'm like, maybe a little, but I work for Rudy. It's not a big deal. And they're like, you could probably make, if you sell some of what you have. And it was kind of due to peer pressure, really. I wanted to get my tax number, and
Mhm.
did my first show at 15. It was just, I just wondered, a lot of times you hear that someone kind of works in the store and then they wind up doing their own thing eventually. I was just wondering if maybe is it you don't like selling cards, like some people just can't do that. I've talked
Uh,
about that even on my show, Mike, is even during my store days, which was 92 to 97. Um,
mhm.
One of my things, if I could have a mulligan, if you could go back, is a lot of things I got attached to, so I wouldn't put out in the showcases in the store. And, uh, I wish I would have with some of those. And then other things I sold, and I wish I wish that I would have
Mhm.
traded some of those cards. I just wondering if there's an attachment that's why you knew like I would not be good at setting up at shows or opening the store. Like
Well,
you know,
the owner was just burned out from traveling so much. To be honest, is what he told me.
yeah,
So he just set up a card shop literally in his house in a garage and had it, taking the garage doors down and put up glass and a sign and put a bigger parking lot in front of his house. He was on a main drag in
yeah,
in the town that I lived in at the time. And yeah, I worked there for 7 years. It was like, a 7 year internship in cards. I mean, I was 13 to 20 years old. So I didn't know anything other than the
yeah,
players' names at
yeah.
13 and some cards that I liked, but learning business, inventory, how to communicate with people. And yeah,
Yeah, it's
it was
that's a
yeah.
great skill set. And I always say,
Mhm.
I'm a teaching assistant, and it's the one thing that I think sometimes we don't see taught in schools, right? Is some of those life skills and money management, and even how many times I go through a register and pay for something, and that someone has trouble making change. So I think a lot of that too, like getting that experience, you working in your case in the card store, me too at a young age, and then eventually doing starting to do my own shows at a very young age, and then store. Like I almost think that those are skills that maybe schools almost should focus on a little bit more. How to
Mhm.
write a check out, how to balance a checkbook, and I think it's starting to come around a little bit. We're seeing that a little bit more. The other thing I'm seeing a little bit more here from not just shows I set up at Mike, but even the ones that I go to. Like I know you're a vintage guy. I'm a big vintage guy. I've always done vintage, but the last 2 years I've really pivoted heavy to that side. And but I'm starting to see younger folks, right?
Hmm.
Really buy more vintage, buy players and cards of athletes that, quite frankly, were retired probably before they were even born. And I love when I see that. I love, when I'm at a show as set up, and a young man or woman's buying, cards of players that I know most likely retired before they were even born. I'll strike up a conversation, and they're telling me about the player and why they like them. And I appreciate that. I'm a Jackie guy. As I said, Jackie Robinson passed away a month before I was born. He passed away in October of '72. I was born in November of '72. But growing up in Brooklyn, we learned about Jackie from a very young age, not just on the field, but obviously the person and man he was off the field, and with social justices that he was striving for. And I learned at an early age that even though someone didn't play when you were alive, that they were the bridge. They were important to the game and the hobby, and to pay that respect. I think we're seeing more of that today with the younger folks today.
Hmm.
To me, it warms my heart. Your thoughts there as a vintage guy.
Well, my connection really, well, I love to read. Plus, I had a grandma who was born in 1919, and she passed away in 2000. And I was maybe 18, 19, gone away to college, and she even lived with my family for a while as a widow. And
Hmm.
I didn't talk to her very much, and then she just like passed away, and I really regretted not spending more time with her to learn more about her childhood and just, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, then in that era. And this vintage era that I'm really into now is the post-war era, that 48 and into the 50s. And a lot of that is just because that was the age of my grandma, and I got
Hmm.
to just learn, you know, I don't know, that might be a little weird, but just to just kind of learn about her era of America and just how things were, and I feel more connected to her in a weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, it makes
that's
sense.
what I that's one of the reasons that I've really gotten to this era. Plus integration into baseball with Jackie
Yep.
and Larry Doby and
Yep.
all the guys that entered in their late 40s.
No,
So yeah, it's just
yeah.
got to
Go
be,
ahead.
you got to have some kind of connection. If
Yeah.
it's like a younger kid, his grandpa, or like your dad, you know,
Yeah.
you have to find a way to connect to that 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever era. There's got to be some kind of connection. Or
Yeah.
maybe you just got burned, on a lot of modern. You spent a lot of money on modern, and then you lost your lost all kinds of money, and we're like, well, let me just buy some Hall of Famers, and
Yeah. And
I'll
I
be all
think
right. So
that's a great point, Mike. I think some of I refer to them as younger because I'm a little bit older. When I say younger, I'm even talking about people in their 20s, even, being almost
yeah.
50. But even teens, again, I'm seeing them buy more of those vintage and like
Hmm.
you said, post-war era cards. And I think what you just said right there is a factor. I think they're seeing what's going on sort of on the modern market, and things softening, and just a lot of cards, right? And you go to a show, and I've talked about this. You go by the cases, and it's just so much of the ultra modern. It's just starting to get a blur to me. Now I do some of it still. I do carry it
Hmm.
as a show dealer still. So I'm not trying to trash it, which I would never do. It's still the greatest hobby, is Dr. James Beckett says. But I just, you see it so much, and so you kind of appreciate the stuff maybe you don't see as much, just naturally, I think, speak. I mean, that's why people go to museums and, historic places. It's just because you don't see those things
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And I think it's the same way in a sense with cards, is that people will tend to gravitate with stuff that's not as easy to obtain or see, and that sort of thing. And so I think that's why we're seeing. I think it's a great point by you that maybe some of the younger folks are kind of doing the math, if you will, and saying, hey, this is probably a safer play. And maybe even a newer challenge, right? I got to do some
Mm-hmm.
research. I got to learn about. I know you mentioned you're a big reader of of history and baseball. The older I get, the more I tend to read now. I've always read, but I just read even more and more and try to fill in the gaps of knowledge. And I think we're seeing that even on the younger end of the hobby spectrum. And for me, I like to see that. It's I love it because we can talk about the Mike Trouts and the Fernando Tatis Juniors and Juan Soto's and all those great players, but they're here because of the players that came before them. They say that themselves. That's not even me just saying that. They allude to that as well. And so it's nice to see even the hobby of collectors kind of acknowledge that uh, too. And now in
Mm-hmm.
the information age, right? Google is 1.2 seconds away, and so if anybody wants to find out anything, it's pretty easy to do, and maybe not believe everything you see, but for most of it's fairly accurate, and it's easy to obtain that information, and it's free. And so do you have a player or team like you when which you collect that you tend to lean towards, or is it just certain errors in general?
Uh, well, I grew up a Cleveland Indians fan because that's really I moved to Ohio in
Yeah,
'92, so I was 12, 13 then, and then the shop owner, the card shop I worked at, he was a big Indians fan, and obviously in the '90s they had some amazing teams and
yeah.
shouldn't have lost to the Florida Marlins with Jose Mesa, so that made me cry. But yeah, I was a big Indians fan for a long time. So, and I'm glad Jose Ramirez is having a great season this year,
Yeah.
and I just yeah. So yeah,
You know,
Cleveland sports in general.
yeah.
Um, but the Reds and well, not the Reds. I guess the Bengals are doing well with Joe Burrow, and the Browns are a total mess. And you could do a whole 2 hour podcast just on the Browns right now,
And
but
that's
we
like a
won't.
bad word to me because believe it or not, even though I'm from New
Steelers
York City,
fan, yeah,
I'm a big Steelers fan. So, we got our own problems too. So I'm in no position to really throw stones at the Browns, and we got to figure out some things. But so
yeah.
you've really like Cleveland is really where your sort of your heart lies. Now, what cards? Is it just baseball, or do you do basketball, football cards at all?
I have some basketball, football cards from when I worked at the card shop, but I really
Yeah,
haven't bought many since I got back into it in 2017. And I've been, 99% in baseball. So lots of rookie card Hall of Famers. I know you're into that too from listening to your podcast. So
yeah.
um,
That's really my PC now, is to knock as many of those. I mean,
mhm,
there's, if you count the four major sports, I think it's something like over 1,000 Hall of Famers combined. I'm never gonna check all those boxes, but I keep my list, and when I
mhm,
acquire one, I check it off, and so that's really the only thing I tend to keep. Everything else is either show inventory or to obtain some more of that
mhm,
PC kind of to level up. But which is probably why I don't really buy as much of the new stuff as I once did. It's just it's I don't PC any of it. there's nothing I'm going to really pull that I'm going to wind up keeping, and so I almost sort of avoid it, just for like the reasons you said, right? For what boxes go for, and then when all the dust kind of settles and you realize like what you got, you're like, man, I'd like to do that one over again, most likely. So, that's generally sort of my mo at this point. And for the longest time, I really didn't PC a lot of stuff, and I really thought about them. Like, for as long as I've been doing this, like, you don't PC much. Jackie Robinson, some Steeler cards, Steeler Legend rookies. But after that, I did, and I'm like, that's a lot of years not to like not PC too much, and so that's when I'm like, I already had a lot of that stuff, Mike, like the graded
Mm-hmm.
Hall of Fame rookies, and I'm like, I've sort of already got a pretty good head start, and so I just pulled some of that stuff literally out of my show inventory boxes and said, you know what, I'm gonna PC these cards, keep them. My show inventory, still pretty, still a lot there. It's not like I really, put a big dent in it. And I'm like, I just enjoy that more than, like we said, the newer stuff for me, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the direction I'm going. And so I mean, I don't know. I just you do this long enough, you kind of figure things out. Sometimes it takes you maybe longer than it should, but eventually the light bulb goes on, and you
Mm-hmm.
decide what you want to do, for sure. But you know, what I love with your content is, you talk about a lot of the history and those era of cards, and I appreciate that as someone who likes that stuff and respects that stuff. Um, any future plans with what you're doing?
Oh, well, I was at which national was it? I'd say 2020. I guess it was 2019. I'm trying to remember now that because we
Yeah,
missed 2020.
yeah,
It was in Chicago, and I was at one of the YouTuber uh, get-togethers, and there were so many like amazing collectors there, and I just decided then that I wanted to build the 1951 Bowman baseball card set,
there you
and
go.
which is a huge task. There's
Yeah,
there's 324 cards, with the Mickey and the Maze, but I wanted to get them all graded eventually, and this is going to be expensive, and I've been working on it for, well, like 3 years now, and it's just I'm in my 40s, so it's not like I'm in my 80s and I'm not going to get
yeah,
to it, but yeah, I'm slowly working on it, and I get a few cards a month. I go to
yeah,
Baseball Reference and read about them and Saber and buy books on these
yeah,
players. And these are some of them are World War II veterans, and I like reading about World War
yeah,
II and D-Day and how they all connected. With Yogi Berra, he was there at D-Day and saw a lot of things from a boat,
yeah.
and just the stories, just the connections. I just have so much respect for that era, and then
Hmm.
just how it connects with my favorite game, baseball. It's just amazing. And let me think. Yeah. Also, I saw an article a few years back, and this guy named E. Powell Miller is obviously a wealthy man because he owns a whole graded set of the T206. Was it like
Wow.
524 or 525 with the air, the
Yeah,
Doyle Air, and he um, had on display at the Detroit Institute of Art, like the whole set, all graded and obviously behind glass. And I was like,
yeah,
wouldn't that be cool to have like the whole Bowman set like that, like an SGC, like your Jackie is, and then just
yeah,
put it on display? Because these companies, especially the vintage era, 50s, 40s, like these artists and the people that created them, they created them as a set, right? To
yeah,
just kind of be collected all together. And that's what they wanted baseball collectors to do at the time, is to build the whole set. and I think it would be amazing to have it on display for people to see the front and back. And but
Yeah, and
this
that's
is a few years down the road because I don't
yeah.
have them all. I'm at 140-ish right now,
So
and
you're almost
yeah,
halfway there. And I got to ask you, Mike, when you
yeah.
made this decision, like, hey, I'm going to do this. How many cards did you have on that day when you decided to throw your hat in the ring and say, hey,
I didn't
I'm gonna
I didn't have any. I didn't have any.
zero. I'm
I
even talking raw. Like I know you want to do them
Raw.
great. How many raw 51 Bowmans did you
None.
have?
I had absolutely none at the time.
Yeah. So you
And
started from literally, we talk about scratch. You were
yep.
literally starting from scratch. You started from point zero, and here you're
Hmm.
halfway there. I got to ask you, right? See, it's the obvious question everyone's thinking. Like, is the Mazer Mantle crossed off yet?
No, not yet. Nope.
Yeah,
Not just because I don't want an authentic, or
yeah,
I'm gonna save to get a bigger, a
yeah.
one or more is what I'm looking for.
So I'm just
So
trying to get
yeah,
it.
it's a big deal, and I know
Yeah.
people are maybe rolling their eyes like you're crazy, but that's
No,
okay.
I don't think you're crazy. I think you're motivated, right? You want to
Yeah.
do it. Like I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be crazy to try to do it, but I love seeing people, uh, you know, finish, complete
Mm-hmm.
missions, whether it be in life journey or hobby journeys. Like going, obviously, Maze and Mano are the two big ones. Do you have like a game plan? In other words, like I'm going to save those two for last and make sure
Mm-hmm.
I can get everything else, or is it like, hey, I'm going to look if I can get a decent one, or are you kind of waiting till you're sort of closer before you sort of put the target sights on those?
I'm kind of waiting towards the end. It'd be nice to have it as the last couple cards. There's a there's another
Yeah,
YouTuber named Alex Bowman 53, and he did the Bowman color set. And his last
yeah,
card that he intentionally got was the Pee Reese.
yeah.
So,
Which is arguably many people feel one of the greatest cards ever made. Great shot, and it's actually a
hmm,
card I don't own, even though I do
yep,
have a decent amount of Brooklyn Dodgers stuff. Um, and my dad gave me some of his Brooklyn Dodger stuff. My dad's 83s, but he's never had, if he's had that card when it was little, it's gone. But I've never owned that card. It's on my, even though it doesn't, it's not a rookie card. It's not Pee Wee's rookie. It's still on my list, on that PC list, just because of that card and how iconic it is. So it's one of
hmm,
those rare exceptions. It's not a Hall of Famer rookie. It's a Hall of Famer, but it's not his rookie. But it'll still crack my list, just because how awesome of a card it is. But because how awesome of a card it is, it's not cheap. So every time I kind of do a search or look at an auction house site, usually the bids are up there, and I'm like, oh man, so maybe I'll run into a lower grade one, let's say, and the price will be right, and I couldn't add it to the PC collection. But I mean, that's the fun, right? And you
hmm.
mentioned the national. Do you tend to go to a mall?
Yeah, this year I'm planning to go. It'll be my fifth one. My
Yeah,
first one was in '97, and I was working at the card shop at that time, and it was in Cleveland, and I live in
yeah,
Ohio, and did then. So it was an hour and a half drive to it then, and then I started going. Goodness, then my first one again was in 2018, so that was like a 21-year break.
yeah.
So that was my second one there, and then I've gone to every one since. So looking forward
Yeah.
to checking out Atlantic City and seeing what that town's got to offer. I've got my hotel and car rental and all that stuff ready to roll.
Yeah, and
So
I hope to meet you, obviously, in
yep,
person. For me, what's nice,
abs-
Mike, what the funny thing is, for as long as I've been doing this will only be I think my fourth national. So I just didn't, I didn't go back in the day. It was just kind of from where I was, and we had the East Coast National in White Plains, which was a big show. The National was just kind of like a real big show, and so it was like for the travel expense. I was younger. It was,
Hmm.
I just never went, and so it wasn't until the last, 4 or 5 years that I started going, and then with the podcast going in support of that. And what's nice about this one this year in Atlantic City is, being here in Syracuse, it's just a 5.5 hour drive, and so normally, Chicago have to fly in, Cleveland
Hmm.
have to fly in. This will be nice to actually pack up the car and kind of drive. And we have a beach house about 3.5 miles away from the convention center. My wife's actually making a trip. She's not into cards, but she'll hang out at the beach with an umbrella and a book and a beverage, and just it'll be a true vacation for her, and it'll be a hobby vacation for the rest of us. And it'd be
Hmm.
nice because I'd be able to bring more stuff than I would normally would. Flying in, just having nothing wrong with a hotel room. I actually enjoy traveling, and hotels don't bother me,
Hmm.
but they'd be kind of in the house setting, and that'll be nice too. And so, that was the one that was canceled. When COVID hit, that Atlantic City didn't get it that year, and so now they got it back. And I've been to Atlantic City, Mike, but never, obviously not for. I've never been there for the national. So it'll be interesting knowing how it's set up at other places, kind of to see how it how the venue goes.
Yeah, fun fact, I actually walked by you and hobby great Rich Klein at the Chicago National. He was pulling like a suitcase and you were helping him out to get
Oh,
out.
we were just walking in,
I think you guys were walking actually
uh,
out at the
walking out.
time. And I was like, wow, that's John. He could be like a lineman in the NFL. He's a bigger guy than I thought. Because on Hobby Hotline and stuff, all I see is like
It's
you're
from the
chesting
waist
up. I'm
up.
like, yeah, wasted up. I'm like, whoa, that's a big dude. But I didn't say anything. You guys
You
looked like
shoulda.
you
You
were on a
shoulda.
mission.
Well, listen. Let's make that happen this year.
Yeah,
Not,
I'll say
no, but
I'll
yeah,
tap you
you
on the
should.
shoulder next time.
Yeah. You should have did it then. I'm a pretty easygoing
Yeah.
guy. Like I might look like a linebacker. I'm not gonna tackle you. I mean, I did play football, but those
Hmm.
days are long gone. So you're safe. And
All right,
yeah,
that's
by all
good.
means, I love meeting folks and talking hobby, talking life. That's generally,
Hmm.
I'm a people person, and so just for what I do for real work, for the content creation, the hobby, I'll talk your ear off. You'll wind up being like, hey man, I got to run. So maybe, but yeah, don't hesitate, and that goes for anybody, right? I'm going to be there all week. So I always joke like, when I'm there all week, probably if you had like a stopwatch, and every time I'm conversating with somebody or someone, and you click it almost like a chess clock, probably one of those, 4 or 5 days is just conversations with hobbyists. And that's what it's about, right? The tagline
Hmm.
of the show is the hobby is the people, right? It's the stories, the people. Like I get it, we're here because of the cards. That's the common theme, the common thread, and no one's bigger than the cards. I agree, but the people you meet, the stories behind how you acquire cards, the conversations you have, that's so important, and I don't belittle that fact. And so I just love, talking with people, and I've had someone. And I was standing in line talking to someone else, and a person behind me who never saw me, tapped me on the shoulders, talking about tapping me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Are you John Newman?" And I was like, "What's this about?" I didn't say that, but I was thinking that. And with my humor, I'm like, "Are you the FBI?" And he goes, "No." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm John Newman." And that's just how I like to mess with.
Hmm.
He goes, "Man, I recognize your voice. I listen to your podcast all the time." So, and that was crazy to me, Mike. Like, I'm gonna put my pants on one leg at a time. Like, that stuff just humbles me, and just I love when I get that feedback, even in email form. Hey, I love the show. Even some of the not, hey, I disagreed with you when you said this. Here's why. Like, I love all that banter, good and bad. But the fact that somebody to think like just on vocals alone, which I don't actually like my voice, truth be told, um, like that really, like, I was shocked. I was shocked, and but it's all that kind of stuff, and I just, I just love conversating, and again, with the greatest hobby, and it's just, for me, and I think for you, you circle that week, right? Every year in the
Hmm.
calendar, it's really about the same time every year. So it's for me now. What I do for work now as a teaching assistant, we have summers off if we want. Now there's summer school, which they asked me to teach, and I told them, listen, I'll teach summer school every year, except this one week almost every year. So if you can work around that, and they said that should be no problem. So it's kind of nice, and it's
Hmm.
it's a hobby vacation, and it's fun. It's fun, right? We look forward to it, and when it's over, it goes quick. And when it's over, right, what do? Start counting down the days all over again to the next one at the next city, and is there so going into this one, going back to you, and going to the national, is like, knocking some of these 51 Bowmans off? Is that your kind of your main focus?
Absolutely. And just any card that I see in great condition at a decent price that it's on my list. There's so many great cards that I want that I don't own, especially vintage cards that,
Yeah.
just see them in the right condition, and, I'll go for it if I can afford it.
Yeah.
So,
Now, will you buy them raw and then sub them
mhm,
yourself too? Okay. I was gonna say that might be the best in some
that's
cases. I mean, not obviously if you can find them slabbed and at a decent price, but I think sometimes the best play is to even, buy them cheaper, ungraded, and then just get them graded, and then you're good.
yeah, either way. I mean, the card's the card, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just if you're familiar with the set, it's really hard to find them centered, especially
Yep.
without scratches, in focus, and without wax on the back.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's the tough part. I mean, I'd have been finished with the whole set if I just did lots of, you know,
Yeah.
PSA ones and twos a while ago,
Yeah.
but um, I'm just waiting and trying to find the best copies that I can afford. You know,
Yeah. Is
some
it?
even go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you have like a baseline? Like, hey, I want to keep it like graded 3 and up, 4 and up. Do you have sort of like a number you don't want to go below, if you can help it?
Yeah, like some of my Hall of Famers are like four and a halfs. I mean, I
Yeah.
even have a Billy Southworth and an eight. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
lower ones, but the commons, it's six, sevens, eights. I even have an eight and a half, which was kind of crazy. And I had that one graded myself, but I'm not trying to get all eights and stuff like that. It's just
Yeah.
nice eye appeal. If the
Yep.
corners are a little, not square, that's all right. It's
Yep.
just big eye appeal for me. That's what I, look
Yeah, and
for.
even when going to my Jackie that I got recently, that was my thing. Like, I knew I wasn't going to afford a high grade, but some, even these ones and 1.5s and twos, many of them, like, you look at it and you're like, I mean, even the one I got, I mean, everyone thinks their cards are sometimes in better shape
Hmm.
than they are, but like looking at it, I'm like, I'm even tempted to like have it regraded. Like, it's close, but I'm just glad to own it, so I'm not worried about another half point or a point potentially. At that point, maybe if I was looking to sell it potentially, but that's not why I acquired it. So I'm not worried about it too much. I'm glad I appeal. You said it yourself right there. I think that's when you can get especially a card like that that has
Hmm.
that. I was in Dallas the last month, and I had while I was in Dallas, the card actually the Jackie was here still in its box. My wife signed for it. It came when I wasn't home. Thankfully, she was home, and but I was at the Dallas show, and there was four or five ones and twos there, and I would look at them and just ask them what they wanted. Some of them were really, you know, just kind of beat up and kind of rough shape, and ask quite frankly asking for more than what mine cost me, and I was just kind of gauging what kind of deal I might have made or not
Mm-hmm.
made, and so I felt after talking to those four or five folks, I felt a lot better about pulling the trigger finally, and my own fault that it cost me as much as it did, Mike, because I had opportunities, as I've said on the show, to get it at a lot lesser threshold. And I always just thought I'll get it another day. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
there. And I had some other thoughts on my mind. But, again, you learn sometimes, in hindsight, the hard way. So cost a little more out of my bank account. But now, for me, I'm kind of looking forward to going to the National without that sort of hovering over my head, because I had kind of set the National as the deadline to finally like acquire this card, and I'm sort of now I had to tighten up the account and not buy anything for 40 days from going
Mm-hmm.
into the National, so I can buy something at the National. But I kind of like going in there sort of without that self appointed pressure, like you have to by the time you leave here, you have to have, the Jackie Leaf. Now that I've already, you can kind of go in there. I don't have another card that has that sort of sense of urgency to it. So you can kind of, for me, take a deep breath and just, I always go in. I don't know how well, you're doing the 51 sets, so that's a different, but I'm not a set guy at this point. I used to be, but not anymore. So I have like six cards on that, graded rookie Hall of Famer list that are sort of ones I kind of want to acquire next. I have more than six that I don't have, plenty more, but I always kind of have six that I try to get next. And my goal is, to knock one or two off by the end of the show, if possible. Three would
Mm-hmm.
be tremendous. I'm not expecting that or anticipating that, just financial reasons why. But so if I can come out of there one or two, I'll be fine. And like I said, getting one or two of those cards, meeting folks like yourself and lots of other people, either for the first time or again, right? It's that week again. I've said this on the show. I call it the Super Bowl of the hobby. You look forward to that week every year. I've heard people call it a family reunion, in a hobby sense, and it really is. And so between getting one or two cards and all the people you meet and the fun you have, going to dinner and talking to people, it's going to be a fun week. And before you know it, it's over, right? And then here we are
Mm-hmm.
counting days again. So is there obviously the 51 Bowman set is kind of your main focus? Do you have anything else that on top of that you're going in there
The
thinking
Reggie
about?
Jackson rookie would be great if
Yeah.
I can find a nice centered one. Those ones are always cut
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
off, so that whole set is really tough there.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, that was one of the big ones. Let me think of anything
Yeah.
else. Oh, and by the way, getting these if my 51 set graded, part of it was just for authentic, just to make sure the card wasn't trimmed or if it's as doesn't have ink on it or
Yeah.
just just for authentication purposes is one of the big reasons, and also insurance purposes too, right? Like you want
Yeah.
to know what your set is worth in case something bad happens.
Yeah. No
So
doubt.
yeah, just so many things would catch my eye. I'd love to have the 72 tops traded Joe Morgan. The ones with the big traded stamps
Yeah.
on it, the high numbered there. I don't have that one, and his Joe Morgan's second year card. I'd love to have a nice copy of that. I have a pretty beat up one right now. So there's
Yeah.
just There's just so many.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
list
and
goes on and on and on. So
it'll never end. But we'll
no,
end before the list does. I always joke, and hopefully that's later than sooner.
yeah,
Obviously. All right, Mike.
yeah.
We're kind of coming down to the home stretch. I know you're involved with the Baseball Card Hall of Fame. I think it's awesome. I voted. I think
Hmm.
last year, obviously again this year. You've grown it. The thing has gained some momentum each year. You're doing this now, and I mean, just it's kind of quick. How did this thing start? I know it's with Ray from Philly, Victor Roman, yourself. Kind of, how did this get off the ground and become what we know it as today? Which is, like I said, it's gained some steam for sure.
Well, Ray from Philly's the founder. He did the first 3 years himself. Was it
Yeah,
2018, 19, and 20? And he came to me and Victor and asked for some help, just because it was kind of just getting overwhelming, just
yeah,
how much work it actually takes to organize everything. And we joined up and just did some video conferencing. And I'm more of a tech guy, so I got the
yeah,
whole voting on Google Forums worked out, and that worked out well. And yeah, we're just a good team. Victor's great at, you know, with him being a hobby palooza with writing and just
yeah,
speaking, and his connections there. And same with Ray, has a great following and loves baseball, and
yeah.
obviously the Phillies and Mike Schmidt. And yeah, we just connected over YouTube. It's actually going to be the first time I'll actually meet Ray in
There you
person,
go. Yeah.
at the National here and at the end of July. So I'm really looking forward to that. And he told me he's a hugger, so I'm gonna
See,
have to prepare
I can be
myself
a
for
hug.
that.
It's funny.
Yeah,
I can be a hugger too, depending on if it's
yeah,
not awkward and stuff. But I'm
yeah,
I'm a touchy feely, like shake your hand, give you a hug, even a side hug, whatever the case
yeah.
may be. I think I get that from my dad. My dad's like a super affectionate guy. I remember even when I was a kid, my people would like my friends would come over, and my dad would like hey man, good to see you. And, I
Hmm.
remember my friends like, man, your dad's like kind of like touchy. I'm like, he's just this super affectionate dude. Don't like it's
Don't
he's
take it
just a super
personal.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, yeah, and he's like that with everybody. And so I'm not that bad as my or like my dad. I'm getting a little bit of that from him. I'm just happy to see people, happy to talk to people. And so I try to show that and wear my emotions on the sleeve. So yeah, it'll be fun, like you said, meeting people for the first time, and love what you do. I'm going to vote in that every year. If you ever need anything, what I'd like to do, I'll say this now, even live. What I'd like to even do when it's voting time next year or before, have all you guys on the show and
yeah,
like
that'd
hype
be
it up.
awesome. We'd appreciate
Uh,
that a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, remind me. I won't forget, but remind me anyway, Mike. And
Okay.
we'll do a special episode, Sports Card Nation. A month or 6 weeks out from the show, and we'll go over the 30-40 candidates. And talk about the the voting and get that word out there. It's already kind of gaining a lot of steam momentum. Let's get it even bigger. I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea. And I'd love to see. I think I mentioned this on Hobby Hotline. I don't think it was this show. I think it was a Hobby Hotline episode. Um, but I'll say it on this show now is what I'd love to see the actual like somebody you guys even like make like a baseball card hall of fame, an actual building where the cards that are inducted are there, even if they're on loan from somebody, even if
Hmm.
like it's a card neither uh no one of you three owns, but can be loaned and obviously in a case where it's safe and protected. But I mean, imagine something like that happening where you actually have the building itself, uh, or even the Hall of Fame itself, the Baseball Hall of Fame, which is not far, as you know, from
Hmm.
me here in Syracuse and Cooperstown. they got the shoebox treasures wing, right? They do
Hmm.
have sort of some holy grail cards section there, but I'd love to see them maybe in coordination with you guys and what you've done, do that. You run the show, so to speak, and then when those cards are announced, the inductees, they they put them on display there, whether that's somebody loaning them. I mean, I'm not far away. If I happen to have one of those on the list and it's in my PC, I would be honored to have them have
Yeah.
it. It's still my card. It's probably gonna have my name. Hey, this on loan from John Newman, right? There's a lot of the things
Hmm.
on there. I'd be glad to do that, especially if it's not in my show inventory anyway. And I'm an hour and 10 minutes away if I tend to
Hmm.
miss it. Maybe I don't know how they do that. Maybe they give me
Yeah.
free admission. I can visit my card anytime I want to. But yeah, I would love to see something like that where like what you're doing now is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great, but even take it like to that next step where there's actually the cards that are inducted, much like the players have, players get inducted, they have either the plaque or the bust, depending on the sport. But with the cards, the actual cards get on that display, whether it's on a wall behind something where obviously the risk of theft is negated, or you know very difficult to do. I'd love to see. And I think, I talked about I would, if I had a card that was on that list, I'd gladly
Hmm.
donate, for display to put it on loan. I think a lot of people would potentially do that. And I don't
Yeah.
think it's as far fetched as some might be listening and say, John, that's sort of I don't think it's that far fetched. I mean, it takes some coordination, some communication, and someone who willing to do it. But I think it's not impossible, and I imagine that. I mean, just and I'm biased too because I'm so close. I can check it out, pretty
Hmm.
much almost any day I really wanted to. So
Yeah. I mean, you could, while you were speaking, I just thought of you could call up one of those high roller auction houses, Heritage or Golden, and they've got the connections to the guys that have the cards. They could loan them out and show them at the
yes, I mean
shrine
it's
at the national. I think every
yeah,
year they could
even
have it
yeah. I mean
on
even if
display there.
great point. Even if it's take out the Hall of Fame, which is close to me, and I'm biased. Even if it was you announced you announced the 10 cards before the national. If the national, even if it's just the 10 cards for that year, they do some kind of
Hmm.
2022 baseball card Hall of Fame. This is this year's class. Here's the 10, and have those
Hmm.
10 cards there. Even if maybe they're in, just like you said, Heritage has that big display with the armed guards that look at you like waiting to shoot
Hmm.
you. um
Yeah, don't get
like
too close there, Sonny. Yeah,
they look like they're
yeah,
ready. Like they're
yeah,
almost like they're almost like hoping you do. Yeah, I was like, go ahead, touch it. Touch it. You know. But all
yeah.
joking aside, great point. Like even if it's just for that, 4 or 5, 6 days, make it part of something already there, but acknowledge the work you guys are doing. I think people would love that. I'm sure you guys would. I would. I'm sure a lot of people would. Imagine
Yeah.
what that would do for what you're doing. Right? Talk about buzz. I mean, at the
Hmm.
national, right? I mean, just incredible. And again, I don't. I'm not saying it's easy. I guess it's easy for me and you to talk about it on the show, but I don't think it's as hard as other people might think it is. It just
Hmm.
takes some coordination, some communication, and someone that really, wants to do. And I think it would be a great attraction. I think it would get more people voting, and then they can say, "Hey, I voted for that card. Let's check it out. We're going international anyway. Let's check out the results
Yeah. The
in the
security is
flesh, so to
already
speak."
there. The audience
Yeah, I
is
mean
already there.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't
Mhm.
have to add anything other than the cards and the space to put
Mhm.
10 cards out if they only want to do just each year's
Mhm.
class. And if
Yeah,
that's,
there's
I mean, that's great. I think that's great. It'll create a buzz and it'll create debate, right? You got two guys looking at the 10 cards like, oh, that one, just like regular Hall of Fames, right? That one
mhm.
shouldn't have got in. That card didn't get in this year. I voted for that. Maybe next year, right? I love that stuff. I mean, that's just great stuff. And if it happens, I'm going to take partial credit for it.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'll just,
fine. You have
but
more hobby connections than I do,
well, I
so
don't know,
if
but I'd love to see it. I think it's just it's a great thing, right? We got Hall of Fames for almost everything now, right? Toy Hall of Fame, advertising Hall of Fame, all the sports obviously have their,
Mhm,
accolades and Hall of Fames. Why not, baseball cards? You know, someone can even piggyback off that. We can do it, football card and
mhm,
other sports and go from there. I think it's just great and something to think about. And again, if you need any help, I'm not a miracle worker, but I'd love to whatever you need if it's in my
I
power.
appreciate it. Ray and
So
Victor say thank you also. So
yeah,
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 we love your
definitely. So
support.
yeah, and again, well, worse, in the very least, next year before whatever you did the 4 to 6 weeks or whatever, we'll do a baseball card Hall of Fame special edition of
Hmm.
Sports Card Nation. We'll talk about the candidates and go through them and the whole show will just be dedicated to
Yeah.
that and get the word out there. It's starting to, like I said, it's starting to
Hmm.
steamroll anyway. We'll push it down the hill even faster. So
Yeah,
that's a promise, and hold me to it, and we'll get it done.
awesome. Yeah, it's community driven. It's just about connecting collectors together and learning about the history of our great hobby. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's work for the committee, but it's just for love for the hobby and for
Yeah,
the
it's a labor
community.
of love, right? Labor of love,
Absolutely.
as they say. All right, Mike. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Mhm.
I'll listen this year. Tap me on the shoulder. Don't I'm not going to bite you, and we'll chat. We'll talk more about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff and getting that stuff going. And look forward to meeting you. I always give the guests the final word. Give out your YouTube channel, social media, anything you want to share where people can see what this baseball card life's all about. What you're doing. So go ahead.
I would just say, first of all, just go on YouTube and, type in sports cards or baseball cards and just connect with. There's so many collectors and channels out there and just start exploring that. I
Yeah.
mean, I have a channel, the last few months I haven't been able to upload as much as I wanted for other life reasons.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, just go and check out the community. There's so many people out there if they're opening packs or just doing podcasts like yourself. Yes, Sports Card Nation is on YouTube, so go and subscribe to the John there too, and just explore, different collectors and their passion, and it's addicting just to
Yeah.
see how people love their teams, their Steelers, their Browns, or whoever. But
Yeah.
it's just it's about community and connecting with others. So
Yeah. Great
yeah,
point. And no matter whatever way your hobby, modern, ultra modern, vintage, pre-war, post-war, there's content for
hmm, yeah,
everybody. So if you're not
yeah,
finding it, I'm going to be mean here and say you're not looking hard enough.
yeah,
It exists,
yeah.
believe me.
Yeah, I
So
love all eras. You just can't buy everything. And
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
the place I'm
yeah.
most active is on Instagram. So it's just this baseball card life on Instagram. So that's where I post most often. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, Mike. Well, thank you, man. Thanks for making some time
hmm,
for us. I'll see you here in about 30 days, and
yeah, I'm
uh,
ready.
keep keep going. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the stuff we talked about tonight. Thanks again.
You're welcome.